r/ask. People of Reddit, what was your closest encounter with a potentially dangerous situation? When I was about 8 years old, I wanted to be a professional singer and my mother fully supported me. She would search for talent competitions all across the East Coast and we'd drive 3-8 hours away from home to participate. She was wonderful. One time, she took me to a place in Massachusetts. She had been contacted by a man who ran a local radio show in his garage and he asked her if I could perform some songs live on it. We were excited and drove all the way, deciding to stay for a week. My little sister, 4 years younger, came along as well. All was great, but things began to get a bit weird. He was overly affectionate and took us on rides on his motorcycle. I remember telling him to slow down or he'll fall off. Then he proceeded to speed up even more, which caused me to squeeze onto him tighter. Once he took me back to his garage, he took my little sister where she reported the same experience. On the last day of our trip, he asked us if we wanted to have a sleepover. I remember getting a weird gut feeling of discomfort and told my mom that I'd rather sleep in our room. This guy had an RV parked in his driveway and we loved to look in it. Taking advantage of our curiosity, he asked if we wanted to sleep in the RV instead. We said yes. But my mother insisted on sleeping it in with us. The RV had a small bunk bed and a couch. My little sister and I took the beds and my mom was offered the couch, while the man slept on the floor. I can recall seeing flashing light on the backs of my eyelids, but paid no mind and fell back asleep. We then traveled home. About a week later, my mother sat us down and told us how this man was taking photos of us while we were asleep. And when my mother confronted him, he simply said, "They are so beautiful, like sleeping angels." She then told us about how he was arrested for pedophilia. My sister and I were freaked when we thought of clinging so tightly to him or hugging him and sitting on his lap. Always be suspicious, my friends. I was 14 and had a boyfriend in a neighboring country, Netherlands, Belgium. I live close to the border, so I used to go to Belgium all the time. My mom only allowed this because my boyfriend 17 would pick me up from the first train I had to take and took the rest of the trains with me. Fast forward, we were having a day out in Bruxelles and we were having a fight. It was a very abusive relationship, but I didn't know it back then. We were sitting on a bench by a park, fighting, and when he had enough, he stood up and walked away, leaving me. Mind you, I was in a foreign country without cell phone data. It was a foreign country. His phone battery died. I was underage and left alone in a city I've never been in before. Some guys on a scooter passed by when I was sulking on the park bench waiting for my ex to return. When they passed again a second time, third time, I was getting an anxious feeling. And then they suddenly stopped and parked their scooter a bit further away from me, staring at me the entire time and walking up to me. I was scared, so I got up and tried to casually walk into the park, but they started following me. Fuck, I didn't know the way, so I took each turn I could, going faster and faster, having them on my heels, going faster as well. I was lost, alone, and round up in a abandoned piece of the park. The guys came running towards me. Suddenly to my left I see a lower path, and a guy walking there. My ex. I ran through the bushes, crying, and grabbed him as fast as I could. He was still upset and pushed me away, but I remained clinging on him. The guys ran after me and suddenly saw me in the arms of a dude. They kept staring, walked a few circles, and eventually went away. I didn't want to know how it would have ended if I didn't find my ex on time. I was almost abducted for human trafficking in high school. I was driving in my truck with the windows cracked about 2 inches because it was a nice day. I pulled into the gated community entrance we lived in to type in the code. There was a white truck parked by our gated community and several men in bright vests were doing landscaping on the entrance. I Thought it was off. There were no phone numbers or business markings on the truck, but they had all the usual equipment. As I pulled in, one of the men began walking over to my truck. I had a weird vibe but stopped by the code box anyway. The man asked me to roll down the window and told me he had a question. At this point I had alarm bells going off. I told him no. What is your question? I can hear you just fine. He starts knocking on the window and glances across my car, and that's when I see another man walking up to my passenger door. He tries opening it. Thankfully I always lock my doors. Both men put their hands in the crack in my windows, and once they realize they can't manually pull the lock mechanism because the crack is too small for their arm, they start to try to pull the windows out to break them. At this time I put my car in gear, whip a U-turn and leave fast. I went to a gas station and called the cops. Turns out they had been taking girls in the area for sex trafficking by posing as a landscaping crew in quiet neighborhoods. They disappeared from the area and I don't know if they were ever caught.